Oh, my lovely law enthusiast humans, if you missed day 29, June 9th, 2025 of the Karen Reed retrial, this catch-up is for you. You need this in your life because it went crazy. And the court that I've been watching today on the 10th, I haven't finished watching it yet, has also been crazy. I'm just under time constraints, and I want to make sure I can get this out in a timely-ish manner, because this is going to be the last week, most likely the last week of court. There are only a few witnesses left. So on day 29, we continued with the cross-examination and redirect, and then recross of, and redirect of, and re-redirect of Dr. Wolfe, W-O-L-F-E, of ARCA, and he has been our reconstructionist biomedical engineer who has been now allowed with his new reports and findings to rebut Dr. Welcher's witness, and then Dr. Welcher is also going to be allowed to rebut him. I don't think he can rebut anything, but you know, we all know my opinion of Dr. Welcher is not very high. But anyway, taking care of day 29, what we had was, there was a lot of talk and discussion on day 28 about the burns and about the road burn and the road rash from the on Rescue Randy, the crash test dummy of ARCA. And there were more pictures shown on redirect because, and Jackson made sure at least 5 times to ask, when he brought in other pictures and full body and different angles, did the Commonwealth show you this on cross? Were you shown this picture on cross? Did they talk about this on cross? No. And that's because I've said before, it perturbs a jury, it perturbs anybody when we think stuff is being hidden from us. If we think, wait, okay, you showed me that, but then when there's more, you need to show me all of it. Because if you're afraid of showing me all of it, that means that this part was cherry-picked and there's more to the story. And I need the whole story. The jury needs the whole story. And juries are consistently, whenever I've watched interviews of jurors who have come forward, one thing that has been repeated is they do not like when they felt like something was kept from them, whether from the Commonwealth or prosecution or the defense. And so Alan Jackson was leaning into that. Like, oh, so he asked about this one thing, but then there's all these other things. It makes the Commonwealth look really bad, because then that also taints the rest of the Commonwealth stuff, because even though maybe whether it should or shouldn't isn't in question, it's that it does, or it can, when people go, well, if you're cherry picking this and didn't show me everything, what else aren't you showing me? What else are you hiding from me? And on top of having them not bring in Proctor, who was notably the lead investigator or main case agent, whatever the title is, he was involved massively in there, and then the Commonwealth doesn't call him. And so now we're only showing snippets and little pictures and questions from Rescue Randy. It looks bad. But then when we got into the end of recross, this is the pop-off. This is what you missed. Brennan showed pictures, or showed the sweatshirt, hoodie that John O'Keefe was wearing, and showed the Dr. Wolfe, the witness, those things, and said, could those have been consistent with road rash or road burn? Because these are on the back of the sweater. So there were, and he said there were other injuries. You told in your testimony on direct that John O'Keefe's shirt didn't have any other injuries except to the right arm, where they had where they had pointed it out. And then he said, but there are these other holes that are there. Dr. Wolfe didn't back down. He was like, those don't look like the same things that are on Randy. They are not consistent with that. They went over talking about the shoes staying on Randy. And they were like, They tried to use the harness as the main stability factor rather than the feet. And so even at 29 miles an hour, keep in mind that the Commonwealth has clocked that Karen Reed was going 24 miles an hour backwards, and ARCA tested all the way up to 29 miles an hour because that's when injuries start differentiating once you get 30 and higher. So they were going several things from going all the way to 17 miles an hour, all the way to 29 miles an hour with repeated tests on the dummy. And at 29 miles an hour, the fastest speed that they've tested, the fastest possible speed that Dr. Welcher and Dr. Burgess concluded could have been it, and they were leaning more towards 24 miles an hour based on the ticks and times and all that. 29 miles an hour, Randy's shoes didn't come off, and they weren't even firmly on the ground. He was blasted several feet, like 10 to 12 feet was what the estimation was, I believe. And parts were shattered. His clothes were mangled, according to yesterday's testimony. His shoes didn't come off. 29 miles an hour backwards, which is 5 miles faster than what the Commonwealth has repeatedly said was how fast Karen Reed was going. And his shoes didn't come off. And one of John O'Keefe's shoes were off. Interesting. But when we come to the holes, we once again had Alessi up there. He had on the gloves. He goes, Your Honor, before I do this, I have to put on evidence gloves. And he was really emphatic about it, and he was very dramatic about putting the gloves on. But he has something to say, and he needs the gloves on. Like, in court, gloves are coming off isn't what it is. Gloves going on, that's where it happens. And he once again asked for the second time in 2 days of testimony, of like non-voir dire stuff, of we want a mistrial with prejudice. They once again wanted this trial thrown out and to not be able to be tried again. I don't think there's any chance of that. Judge Canone knows that there's only 2 or 3 days of actual case left, and the chances of her being Judge Canone and the way she makes rulings, doing that, super unlikely. It would have to be beyond major, I think, for Judge Canone to make a mistrial ruling like that. And she already has shown that she is at least a little bit biased towards the defense. It would have to be like any Joe Schmo off the street would have to be able to see that that's so wrong it cannot be rectified. However, she went with Alessi said it was because Brennan intentionally called attention and asked cross-examination questions about the holes on the back of John O'Keefe's hoodie. But guess what? There were photos and there were pictures taken before and after by the forensics teams, and Miss Harnett, who was the processor for the things, she had cut those holes. And she had noted them, and there were pictures before and after, and she had report notes of making those holes to be able to do tests on them. And then Brennan presented them like the road or the getting hit by the car could have caused these injuries. Dr. Wolf had said over and over, no, those holes are not consistent with road burn or road rash. They're not the same kind of holes. There's no debris. And John O'Keefe has no things of sliding several feet like Rescue Randy did in the road. And he wasn't found in the road. John O'Keefe was found in a yard covered in snow. He was not found skidded across pavement. There were sidebars. And Brennan came up to the stand and admitted that he was wrong. He was like, I made a mistake. How did you make that mistake, sir? You had all of these photos. All the photos of the defense you had first, actually. So how can you try to, he was like, I made a mistake. I didn't realize that they were this. They were indeed made by the forensic expert, not by the road. And we should have a jury instruction. We can strike that part of the cross-examination to fix it. And as much as I don't like Judge Canone, I agree that this was not egregious enough for a mistrial with prejudice, because I think because Brennan owned up to it, and so being able to say, yeah, the prosecutor messed up, and this was not made like that, so you're to disregard that testimony. These cuts were definitively made by a lab expert, and they identified which lab expert. Alessi did make an argument for wanting stronger language than the judge originally wanted to. And Alessi was like, no, you bring the hammer down. I want the jury to know Brennan messed up. Don't try to gloss over it, because she tried to give like a neutral, and he was like, no. Brennan messed up big time. I want them to know that. So she did end up putting stronger language in, not as strong as Alessi was going for, but stronger language. And the jury was out. Their lunches had arrived, and then they were pulled back into the courtroom. They were ticked off. According to Judge Canone, the jury was ticked off because they had to have a voir dire about another pathological forensics expert, so another medical examiner-esque person, Dr. Lapasato, because they were arguing about what she could and could not say, and going into other additional arguments with her, and then they had to leave and come back again. And then Judge Canone said we're calling it. The jury is frustrated. They're like really upset. We're really upset. Everyone was mad. Everyone left court mad that day. The jurors were mad about, we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out. Here's our lunch. You don't get your lunch. Your lunches are going to get cold because we need you in here for 5 minutes. Now, okay, now you can go. It was insane. So those were the highlights. It was crazy. And at the end of the day, nobody knows what happened except that Brennan messed up. That's what matters. We also know that we're not getting a jury, a mistrial with prejudice, and that the jury should have closing arguments possibly as soon as Friday. It might be Monday, but right now, based on how things are going, there's only a couple witnesses left for the defense's case, and then there are 2 or 3 rebuttal witnesses for the prosecution. And as it turns out, they're not bringing Dr. Crosby. The fun stuff that happens here. Mr. Crosby, Dr. Crosby, is not a medical doctor, but he was going to be there to rebut stuff from Dr. Russell, but then they're going to be able to do that with another expert that they have. Sure. And that is where we are here. Confuzzled, concerned, and so tell me what you think about how the trial's going right now. For those of you who are interested, I am going to be giving other legal court updates for the baby reindeer lawsuit, Lizzo lawsuits, and I will be doing catch up on Diddy as well. It's just that Karen Reed was my priority, and because those things are happening concurrently, that's where I chose to focus my energy. I am just one person, and like anybody else in the world, I only have the energy, time, and capacity for so much, and that's where I chose to put my energy. So we will catch up on everything else going into next week. I hope that you're enjoying my summaries. Are they perfect? No. Am I perfect? No. Are you perfect? No. Glad we got there. I will see you later, my lovely humans.